Jaya Gopal, Keshava Madhava, Dinadayal. Jaya Govinda, Jaya Gopal, Keshava Madhava, Dinadayal. Shama Sundara Kanayalal, Girivaradari Nandadulal. Shama Sundara Kanayalal, Girivaradari Nandadulal. Dinadayal Prabhu, Dinadayal, Dinadayal Prabhu, Dinadayal. Dinadayal Prabhu, Dinadayal, Dinadayal Prabhu, Dinadayal. Jaya Govinda, Jaya Gopal, Keshava Madhava, Dinadayal. Jaya Govinda, Jaya Gopal, Keshava Madhava, Dinadayal. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Keep singing for 2 more minutes.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari. 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha, Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna
everyone. Good morning. Good morning and Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Uh, what is the topic of the day? Is Bhagavad-Gita for self-transformation. And why this topic? It is because it's the most relevant to all of us, be it a student, teacher, or a parent. Okay? Why now? That is the big question, right? Why only today? Why now? His Grace Chaitanya Maharaj. Okay, cool. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has researched and contributed a lot to the spiritual community in the scientific way. Okay? He has churned Bhagavad-Gita and written over 25 books from various perspectives that are palatable to the ordinary people like us. Okay? For his contributions in scientific methods on spiritual topics, he has been titled a spiritual scientist. So, Prabhuji is a monk, a mentor, and a spiritual author. He has done his electronics and telecommunication engineering from Government College of Pune, College of Engineering Pune. He subsequently served as software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporation. Seeing the prevalent problems and problems of stress, seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection in the society, all caused by the lack of spirituality, he felt inspired to dedicate his life to the cause of sharing the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavad Gita under the aegis of ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami and took his initiation in 2000. He travels all over the world from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in universities such as Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, and Cambridge, and companies such as Intel, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, to name a few. He also maintains a huge database of questions and answers on his website, thespiritualscientist.com. It is Krishna's mercy that Prabhuji is visiting Atlanta and accepted to give his association to us. So that is the why now. Answer the question, why now? Okay? Let's all welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu with full heart and audible Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
And one request to everyone, to benefit all of us very well, is silence your phones and pay attention with complete focus so that we can get benefit of this Prabhu's association. Hare Krishna. Am I audible to you? Let's begin with some prayers. Can you repeat after me? Om. Namo. I offer my respects to the all-pervading divinity who is known as Vasudev. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Prabhu Nityananda.
Prabhu Nityananda.
Shri Advaita Gadadhara.
Shri Advaita Gadadhara.
Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming here today. And I'll discuss the topic of Bhagavad-Gita for self-transformation in 4 broad parts using an acronym, CARE, C-A-R-E. So before I start, this is why this topic. It is for one major reason. Many of you may be aware that as inflation is increasing, property prices are increasing. Getting a house, getting a room, to get a big room, it is a lot of money to spend. But there is one big room that is available for all of us, and that is the room for improvement. That is something which we all have a huge amount of room. And if you look at ourselves, yes, there are many things which we could do better. But how do we go about doing that? That's what we will discuss based on the Bhagavad-Gita. So for each of these 4 points, I'll be talking about one healthy approach and one unhealthy approach. And we'll be talking about a verse from the Bhagavad-Gita. And after each part, I'll pause. And if any of you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those. So care, C-A-R-E. So C is curiosity, not criticism. Now what do I mean by this? When I was studying in college, so more than 25 years ago, I was staying in a hostel. And I once came back from my home almost a week before the college was supposed to start. So most of the hostel was empty. And I went toward the restroom and I heard someone screaming at someone else. And that person was using such a shrill voice and such foul language. And I was thinking, is this an engineering college or what is this? And who is this person yelling at? And as I was hearing only one voice, thinking, why the other person is not standing up for themselves? How is the other person taking such insults so severely? And then I entered into the city and I saw one of the students who was one of the best students in my year batch. He was standing in front of a mirror and yelling at himself. You are such a useless fool, you are worthless, you are an idiot, you are good for nothing, you lose every opportunity, you are a loser. I was shocked because we all considered him to be an excellent student and a very successful person. So that was the first time it struck me that if this person had been insulting someone else like that, that person would have been outraged. But he was insulting himself. And in one sense, it's just going on. So of course, he was doing it externally, like in an audible way. But if you think about it, some of us, sometimes or many times, we often speak very negatively about ourselves to ourselves. And these have an effect. These have quite a negative impact on us. So, if somebody else would have insulted us like that, we would have got angry with them. But when we insult ourselves, you are useless, you are worthless, you have no talent, you have no commitment, you have no ability, no discipline, you are a loser. Yes, I'm a loser. Just accept it. So, here, this kind of criticism can be very destructive. And because sometimes there is a reason. Sometimes we act in ways that we are not proud of. And that's an understatement. We are embarrassed of the way we act. As it is said, there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There are some people who are wise and some are otherwise. It is not just that there are 2 kinds of people. We ourselves sometimes act in ways that are wise and sometimes we act in ways that are otherwise. So we could say that I've done foolish things and I deserve to be angry with myself. Well, yes and no. We all do mistakes. And some mistakes can have serious consequences. So it is at such times we may realize the need for self-transformation. See, our attitude toward ourselves varies between two extremes of a pendulum. One extreme is, I am wonderful. You know, like Duryodhana in the Mahabharata says to the Kuru assembly, after great introspection, I cannot see even a single fault in any of my actions. Now, that is ego. That is a person who is so blind to their own faults that a person just saying, I am perfect. And we sometimes have that attitude. But sometimes from that attitude, we go to the complete opposite, where we start beating ourselves. So it's like extremists, we are patting ourselves on the back, just see how wonderful I am. And then from there, we start slamming ourselves on the head. So it's like from one end of the pendulum, we go to the other end. In general, in front of the world, in a normal course, we are quite defensive and protective of ourselves. You know, if somebody says you've done something wrong, we try to defend ourselves. One common strategy is, why do you behave so irresponsibly? Somebody says to us, look at your own behavior. Who was talking? We try to counterattack. So, by that, we try to protect ourselves. And that's fine. We don't want to feel threatened. But the point is, neither of these attitudes is helpful. Like, being too full of oneself is not helpful, but being too negative towards ourselves is also not helpful. It can be very demoralizing. In fact, depression and other mental health problems, low self-esteem, and all these, they come when a person is too hard with themselves. So, the point which I am making over here is not criticism, but curiosity. Now, what do I mean by curiosity? Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad-Gita, in the 14th chapter. He says, 22nd verse, Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava nadveshti sampravrittani nanivrittani kamshati udasina vadasinam gunayo na vichalyate gunavartan gityeva yovatishtati nengate. So he says, become an observer of yourself. Observer of not just your actions, but also your emotions, your thoughts. Just observe yourself. And what is the advantage of this? We can learn a lot about ourselves. We all grow up in particular ways, in particular cultures, particular settings. And based on that, we try to explain ourselves to others and we explain. Okay, what did I do? Why did I do? And for explaining, we put labels on ourselves and others. But these labels are not very helpful. Suppose somebody says, they get angry and they yell at others. Why? I'm short-tempered. Okay, that's a fair explanation. But suppose, say a plane suddenly crashes, and then there's a big inquiry. And the airplane company says, what caused the plane crash? It says gravity. Now, is that a correct explanation? Well, yes, gravity caused the plane crash. But is that a useful explanation? No. Because gravity is always there, isn't it? So planes are designed to fly in spite of gravity. So what happened at this particular point that the plane crashed? When gravity was always there, why did the plane crash at this time? So similarly, if I am short-tempered, then yes, that short-temper conditioning, we'll talk a little later on. The Bhagavad-Gita says there are impressions, there are conditionings in our mind which prompt us towards certain behaviors. But that short-temper conditioning is always there with us. If it is there, it is always there with us. But why is it that we explode at particular times and not at all times? So what caused the trigger? What caused the explosion? So curiosity means we observe ourselves as if we are a person we don't know much about. Okay, this person got angry and yelled. Why did this person yell? What happened? Oh, this person spoke this. Okay, that person spoke this. But others have also spoken something similar. You get angry with this person, those people. I'm angry with this person. Oh, because this person might have a tense relationship with this person. This person is always speaking negative comments. finally this was explosion. So it was not so much the statement, but the person who made the statement. And the history of the person that caused the explosion. So we understand, okay, this person is a little, this person I had to be a little careful with this person. We all have people around us who sometimes bring the worst out of us. Some people bring the best out of us, and some people bring the worst out of us. So if we know this person, I have this little tension with this person, then maybe when I'm interacting with them, I have to be extra careful. So like if we are going on a road, if we know a road, a particular road is very bumpy, then we go with greater caution. So the journey toward transformation has to begin with curiosity, not criticism. Because curiosity enables us to learn, okay, not just what went wrong, but why it went wrong. Just, okay, I felt depressed. Why? Oh, because I'm a pessimist. Just think everything negative. Well, that's not again a very helpful explanation. Okay, I might tend to think negative, but what triggered that negative thought at this particular point? So have curiosity. The Vedanta Sutra says, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Brahma can refer to the ultimate spiritual reality. Brahma can also refer to our own spiritual essence. So know thyself. In the Western tradition, Socrates famously said that. Know thyself. So be curious. Don't be judgmental, be curious. So self-transformation can begin with something as simple as curiosity. And if we just try to learn about ourselves, okay, what are the times when things work for me? What are the times when things don't work for me? And when things don't work for me, or rather I am not able to work in those situations, what exactly goes wrong? In the Bhagavad-Gita, as many of you know, Krishna and Arjuna are discussing. Where are they discussing? Does anyone know? Yeah. On a battlefield. So now this battlefield setting is quite remarkable. It's like suppose there's a cricket match. Maybe the one day international World Cup final is there. India and Pakistan are playing. Maybe the world's biggest ground, Eden Garden or something like that. There are thousands of people on the ground. There are millions of people on TV watching. And the toss has been done. And the fielders are in their place. The batsmen are on strike. All of you know about cricket, I presume, isn't it? No. India is mad for cricket, but I don't know about Indians outside India. Especially those who are born here. When I speak to Americans about cricket, many of my organizers still don't talk about cricket. Because Americans think about an insect, not a sports. So, the batsman is on strike, the bowler is in the run-up, bowler is about to come. And then suddenly, the striker calls the non-striker. And both of them come in the middle of the pitch. And they start talking. And they keep talking. And they keep talking. Now, everybody becomes, says, come on, you play the match, what are you doing? So, Krishna and Arjuna had a discussion like that. The match, in those times, war was in some ways like sports. It was, of course, a fierce fight, but it's a test of skills and strength. And that's why they would fight according to rules. We fight from morning to evening, and then we stop. It's like a cricket match, intense rivalry on the field. But after that, hostility ceased till the next day. So, but everybody was ready, and then suddenly they started talking. And they kept talking, and they kept talking. So, what is going on? Now, sometimes some sports players are such that if the match is going against them, the other team batting too well or playing too well, then what happens is the first team against which things are going, they'll try to slow things down. Just decrease the bowling rate, take a lot of time for putting the field. The bowler comes running in and again stops and goes back again. They try to do tricks to try to disrupt the rhythm of the opposite. And that's called gamesmanship, which is the opposite of sportsmanship. So sportsmanship is playing in the proper spirit of the sport, but gamesmanship is tricky. So now some players may do like that, but if the fielders, the spectators, they all know, so these players, the batsmen, the striker, non-striker, they're not like that. They're good sports players. Then everybody will be very curious. What is so important? They're waiting, keeping everyone waiting to talk. So everyone will be very curious. So similar is the setting of the Bhagavad-Gita. Everybody is kept waiting. And because it was the whole battle, at least initially, was in a sportsmanly spirit. So when Krishna and Arjuna started talking, the commander of the opposite side, Bhishma, He raised his hand and says, wait, let them have that talk. And that's how everybody stopped at that time. So it was at a very critical juncture they were having this discussion. And what had happened was, Arjuna had broken down. He was in tears. He was thinking, how can I fight against my relatives? How can I fight against my elders? See, is this the right thing to do? So Krishna could have immediately labeled Arjuna, you are a coward. Stop being cowardly. But Krishna does not do that. So that could have been criticism. Krishna warned Arjuna that the world may think like this, that you are being cowardly. But Krishna doesn't call Arjuna a coward. Krishna says, okay, this indecision has come upon you. This is not becoming for you. But Krishna does not label Arjuna. Krishna educates Arjuna. So instead of criticism, there is curiosity. Okay, you got overwhelmed by this emotion. What caused this emotion for you? So what had happened for Arjuna was, when he expresses his apprehensions, his reason for hesitating to fight, not once does he mention fear of his own death. So it's not at all cowardice. He is confused at that time, what is the right thing to do? So imagine there's a high court judge, and the judge is always very fair. And any criminal will be punished, any innocent person will be released. And the judge comes to office today, and they are sitting in the judge's seat, and the accused person comes, and they find the accused person is their own son. Now, what do they do at that time? Do they act as a judge and punish the accused, or do they act as a parent and try to protect the accused? So that is the confusion. So Arjuna also has similar confusion. So his question is ethical. And Krishna, rather than just condemning his emotions, you are becoming sentimental, you are becoming cowardly, Krishna helps him understand himself. So curiosity. That's what. So often we think self-transformation is, I need a lot of willpower. I don't have so much willpower. What can I do? Well, willpower is not as important as simple curiosity. Okay, when we act in some way that is unhealthy, say we overeat, we oversleep, we get angry with someone, we waste time gossiping. Does anyone know what is gossip? What is gossip? Okay. That's an explanation that requires an explanation. Anyone would like to say what is gossip?
Talk about someone unnecessarily.
Useless talk, unnecessary talk. Yes, that is true.
And drains the energy.
It drains the energy. Yes. Yes?
It's like talking bad about other people and like talking about like news.
Talking about bad about other people. Yes, that is true.
Research on that.
That's true. Any other answer? And all the answers are true.
Research on the event.
Research. Research on the event. Well,
Gives the information we don't know.
yeah, okay. Because if we don't know, there's one more thing. We don't need to know. There is some information we need to know. But there's much that we don't need to know. You want me to say something?
It's like mostly rumors or sometimes it's not true. It's just something false.
Yeah, it's unsubstantiated. It's just like, okay, this may be like this, may be like this. It's all speculation and usually negative speculation. Yeah. You wanted to add something?
Talking bad about somebody without letting them know.
Talking bad about somebody
Without letting them know.
without letting them know. Okay. Not in front of them, behind them. That's a good. Yeah. In front of them, we are very straight, oh, just a nice person. Yeah. That's a good point, yeah. So you can say, it's one way of understanding gossip. When does gossip happen? Okay, many ways, but one very common time is when we hear something we like about someone we don't like. That is where we all tend to gossip. This is a terrible person. Now I'll tell everyone I'm doing social service. Everyone should know how terrible this person is. So afterwards we feel bad. Maybe I did. Maybe it was not true. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So, but when we gossip, rather than saying, I'm a terrible person. Okay, what made me gossip? What happened in that? It could be something as simple as just bored. Or maybe I was in a bad mood at that time. That person did something which hurt me, I wanted to hurt them back. So we try to analyze to understand ourselves. And in this sense, there is a moral dimension to our behavior and there is a mechanical dimension to our behavior. The Bhagavad-Gita explains that we are all souls. At our core, we are spiritual beings. And the body and the mind, both are like machines. They are both machines that we are operating. Or rather, the two are combined one machine. It's like a car which we are driving. But it's not a car we are physically driving. Nowadays, we have these automated cars, a Tesla or something, where we do something, but the car does a lot more things. So what happens is, it has its own programming by which it operates. So like that, we are all operating about the car. Now sometimes, if a car goes in the right direction, that's because we turned it right. Sometimes it may go off because of some other reason. Why did it go in that direction? Or maybe there was a bump over there. Maybe the car program misfired and thought there was a bump over there and went in this direction. But there was no bump over there. So what happens is, we are operating a machine that sometimes works the way we want and sometimes works on its own. So curiosity means we understand that we are not our physical self, we are not our body, we are not our mind. These operate in particular ways. Let me understand how they operate. Now of course sometimes they operate according to our plan also. Sometimes we really want to hurt someone. Sometimes we speak something hurtfully without wanting to hurt them. And sometimes we deliberately speak hurtfully. That is also there. So, that is the difference between anger and hate. Anger is hot-headed. Hate is cold-blooded. So when we are angry, just suddenly some rush of emotion comes over us and we do certain things. But when we hate someone, we are very systematically, almost clinically planning. What comment spoken when will hurt this person most? And then we speak those. So that's like we are deliberately moving the car in a dangerous direction to hurt someone. That also happens. But curiosity helps us understand our body-mind machine better. It also helps us understand how we are operating this body-mind machine. So we can just try to be curious about what we do and why we do it. So this is where self-transformation can begin in a very non-demanding and non-threatening way. Because non-demanding means if I feel I need willpower. Okay, do I have willpower? I don't have willpower. Sometimes we feel I try to change. And we try to give up some bad habit and we try and try and try. And then we don't succeed. Then what happens? We give up the attempt to give up the bad habit. So, we just, Oscar Wilde, he said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So I gave up smoking, but it didn't give up me. It didn't give me up. So sometimes you may give up. So sometimes self-transformation can seem very demanding. Or it can seem very threatening. If I have to change myself, that means I'm a bad person. Like, no, I don't want to be a bad person. So we deny it. But curiosity gives us a very almost neutral platform to observe ourselves. And that's why Krishna says, Udasina Vadasina. Observe yourself from a detached perspective. As if this is some other person I want to know. Let's see how this person behaves. And that way, we can learn a lot about what enables us to work, what enables us to malfunction. So that's the first part of it. So what acronym are we discussing? Care. And C was what?
Curiosity, not criticism.
Yeah, curiosity, not criticism. Thank you very much. Any questions about this at this point? Okay. So, feel free to ask questions anytime during the class. Curious about curiosity. Okay, nice. Yes, please.
Can criticism be positive?
Yeah, we'll come to that. See, I'm not saying that criticism is always bad. I'm saying begin curiosity. And sometimes criticism may be, I could have acted this way, that's irresponsible of me. That is hurtful of me. So I'm not saying criticism is a bad thing. I'm just saying that begin with curiosity. Because criticism may mean that when we start criticizing, it might demoralize us further, or it might make us defensive, and then we'll not be able to move forward. So there is a time to make moral judgments, but that should not be the beginning. Then we just end up becoming either too defensive or too discouraged. So afterwards, yeah, I could have done like this, I did like this. Criticism there is room for criticism, but generally, if there is direct criticism, it can be destructive. So the difference between constructive and destructive criticism is, okay, you want to tell the answer? Yes?
So like constructive criticism is like telling you what you can do better and like what you did wrong, and but destructive is just like you're bad and like you're like it doesn't tell you how you can improve. It's just criticism, like it's bad.
Yes, that's a very nice way of differentiating. Now, the difference between constructive and destructive criticism is this is like a phone. Now, if say this phone, maybe it has some kind of app by which I can magnify certain things. I can take a photo of certain things. So I look through it, I can see it, and I can look away from it, I can see you directly also. But if I bring the phone closer and closer and closer and closer, then what happens is I can't see anything except through the phone. So there might be a camera over here, so I can see, but I can see only through that. And the camera is concave, unclean, distorted. That's what I will see. So what happens for all of us? We all have certain behaviors. Like I talked earlier about labeling. Now labels are not necessarily always bad. Like some people are slow at doing things. Some people can do things fast. Some people are, say, fluent in speaking. Some people struggle to speak fluently. Some people are good at singing. Some people are good when they stop singing. So we all have different attributes, and knowing about them is not a problem. And yes, if somebody is not that great at singing, there's no need for them to sing in public. That's fine, telling them that. But what happens is, destructive criticism does not point out the problem in the behavior. It like draws the problematic behavior very close to the person and makes the person a problem. You can't do this, so you are a bad person. That is when it becomes destructive. It's not a pointing out to the behavior or the action. It is directly pointing out to the person and equating the person with that action. So somebody comes late to school or to a program. Okay, you can point out, everybody is here, you came late. Why is it? Or you are such an irresponsible disruptor of everything. Yeah, that's a direct attack. So a direct attack on a person is usually destructive. That's destructive criticism. Okay. So when we have curiosity, what happens is we already create a distance between us and that behavior. Yeah, I am here, I am observing. This is what this person did. It's I only, but I am observing myself as a separate distance person. And then you can say, okay, this was not a good thing to do. We can evaluate, but curiosity keeps things safe. It doesn't let them become threatening. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? So we'll move to the second part now. Care. A is attraction, not aversion. What I mean by this is that we all, when we meet someone, again continue the same thing of curiosity. That means treating ourselves like another person. We are observing them. So when we meet some new person, there might be some things about that person we like. We are attracted to that person. And there are some things you may not like. So sometimes we may dislike. Averse. So this is there with everyone. Because nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfectly good, nobody is perfectly bad also. There is something which we like, something we don't like, something we are attracted to, something we feel a little averse to. So when we are looking at ourselves, there are certain things about us which we feel embarrassed about, which we don't want anyone else to know because they're not such good things about ourselves. So we may even feel averse. What kind of person does things like this? But there are certain things about us which are good. You feel attracted to. Yeah, this is good. I do this well. I can behave well in this situation. So we need to focus on what is good about us and build that. For what we are attracted to, focus on that. If we focus on what we are averse to, that will increase negativity. We may say, but there are some things which are better than me and I dislike them. That's okay. We want to work on them. But how do we work on them? We work on them by increasing the strength of what we are good at, what is good about us. So, to explain this point, I'll take two examples. Suppose, say, when somebody does something good, we can, if you want to appreciate them, we appreciate them very nicely. We speak good words of praise and appreciation. But when something good happens to someone, we feel very strongly jealous. So now, jealousy is an emotion that we all feel at times. But it is not an emotion that you would like to tell everyone about. So if person A tells person B, something bad about it, you are jealous of the person. No, I'm not jealous. I'm just unhappy that good things are happening to that person and they're not happening to me. Well, that's the essence of jealousy, isn't it? But you don't want to name it. No, it's not jealousy. But it happens something like that. So, okay, if I tell myself, don't feel jealous. Well, okay, it's good to say like that. But many times our emotions are not in our control. They are almost like involuntary reactions to situations. So I said that there are three levels of our existence. There is the spirit, the soul, the mind, and the body. At the level of the body, there are some people who are, say, very thermal sensitive. If the temperature drops, they start feeling cold. Now, suppose somebody is sitting in a room and they start feeling cold. And they tell the organizer or the host, I'm feeling cold. And the host says, don't feel cold. What do you mean, don't feel cold? It's not a choice for me, I'm feeling cold. Now, so the sensation of cold is not in our control. But the action is in our control. Maybe I can decide, okay, I can get some warm clothes and put around me, a blanket or something. Or maybe I can go and sit in some other part of the room which is a little warmer. Or maybe, I'm here just for maybe a few minutes more, I can bear it. So the action is in our control, but the sensation is not in our control. So the same, what applies to the body, also applies to the mind. There are certain emotions that are not in our control. If something good happens to us, then we feel jealous. Well, that jealousy as an emotion it's not immediately in our control. It may be, but eventually, but not immediately. So trying to fight against that, it's a losing battle. It's like, I don't feel cold. How can I not feel cold? I can tell me tolerate the cold. Yeah, I can do that. But they don't feel cold. Well, that's not a choice for us. So, just as our body sometimes feels sensations on its own, which are like the body's reactions to outer events. So a drop in temperature. So similarly, our mind has certain reactions. So those reactions will almost involuntarily happen. And saying no to them, don't feel like this, that is not very helpful. It just makes us feel powerless. Because I'm still feeling like this. It makes us feel powerless, it may also make us feel guilty at times. But instead, rather than focusing on what, and I also know that I shouldn't be feeling jealous, but I am feeling. So that may make me dislike myself. What kind of person am I that I feel jealous like this? But no, instead of focusing on what we are averse to, focus on where to at it. Okay, say as I said that we might still be able to speak appreciative words to someone. If they've done something good, we may internally feeling jealous, but externally we speak very nice words to them. It could be hypocrisy, but it doesn't have to be hypocrisy. So when we speak some good words of appreciation to them, don't just speak them so that they hear. Speak so that we also hear it. And then what happens is, we shift our attention from what is involuntary to what is voluntary. If there are certain things about us which we dislike, changing them is not that easy. It takes time. But just because those kind of thoughts or desires or emotions come within us, doesn't necessarily mean we have to act on them. If we shift our energy to some other direction, something that something that is good about us, something that we are attracted to, something that we can focus on, then our attention goes in that direction and the negative emotion automatically subsides. It's like if we have a glass of water And if you have glass and there's vacuum air in it, you want to pull out all the air. It's extremely difficult. You put water in it, the air will go away from it automatically. So like that, we can't empty our consciousness. So if some negative emotion is coming over there, and something which is not just negative from the world's perspective, even we don't like it, but we can't empty it, we can't drive it out, but we can crowd it out. So we need to focus on what we can fill our consciousness with, not what we need to empty our consciousness of. So whatever it is that we feel, okay, this kind of behavior is unhealthy, whether it is anger or whether it is jealousy or whatever it is. I want to act like this. So the first the emotion comes and then the action comes. So what we can do is try to fill our consciousness with something else. And once we do that, we'll find that change will become easier. So focus, so to put it another way is that if we have an unhealthy habit, we want to give up. It is not possible for us to fight against a habit. Why? Because the habit is there, the impressions are there inside us and they will come out. But we can create a healthy habit and let that healthy habit fight against the unhealthy habit. If we ourselves try to fight against an unhealthy habit, it won't work so well. Just create a healthy habit and fight against an unhealthy habit. What does that mean? Say for example, if at night, say, after we go to sleep, we wake up. And then as soon as we wake up, our hand goes to our phone. And we start looking at our social media, we start looking at our various messages. And then we start thinking about who has posted what, and then for an hour we are not able to sleep. Then we have a busy day and we are tired and then we are irritated and the whole day gets spoiled. Now we may decide, I'll keep my phone outside my room only. Well, that's okay. That's one way to do it. If you can do it, that's fine. But sometimes the phone may work as an alarm clock, some emergency might come, we need the phone next to us. So instead of focusing on what we will not do, I will not visit my social media after this time and before this time. Well, okay, that's a good resolution to have. But the problem with that is that if we have been doing that for a long time, that habit is there within us. And habits create almost like a palpable itch inside us. Like, I need to do this. So instead of that, we might decide that, okay, if I pick up the phone, maybe I will open some app where I can read something which is uplifting, which is something pacifying. Maybe I'll read one verse of the Bhagavad-Gita. If I wake up at night and not able to sleep, let's read one verse of the Bhagavad-Gita. And not that I will not read social media, this is what I will read. After reading this, if I want to go to social media, I will go. Don't focus on what we'll say no to. Focus on what we'll say yes to. And once we focus on what we'll say yes to, gradually we may find that, okay, I read one verse of Bhagavad-Gita, then I still go to social media. Okay, that's fine. But at least we did this. And if we keep doing this, after some time we'll see that, okay, we read the Bhagavad-Gita, we feel a little pacified, we feel a little uplifted. Start thinking, okay, what is the social media? Does it really need to be read now? I can wake up tomorrow morning and I can read that. That will also be okay. So slowly our inner strength will develop. Because what happens is that, again, our body is like a machine. Our mind is also like a machine. So it functions in particular mechanical ways. So the things that we have acted, the ways in which we have acted earlier, we will tend to repeat those actions. And to stop the repetition is very difficult. But to start something new is relatively easier. And once you start something new, then gradually this new habit will become stronger and that will counter the older habit. So don't define ourselves by how much we can give up a bad habit. Define our success by how much we develop a healthier habit. And eventually the healthier habit will overcome the unhealthy habit. So I can give an example of a snowball. But I'll elaborate that in the next point. But the second point was what?
Attraction,
Not aversion. So focus on what we are attracted to. Build on what we are attracted to. Don't try to fight against, or we can say fight for what we are attracted to. Don't fight against what we are averse to. Let that, what we are attracted to, eventually fight against it. That is the second point. So what is the acronym we are discussing? Care. Thank you. So any questions about the attraction and aversion? Okay. So let's go to the third point now. This is related with what I said about care. So each of these is like sequential. It's distinct point, but it's sequential also. So Krishna, before I move forward, Krishna talks about this several times in the Bhagavad-Gita. It is focus on the positive. If he says, just you try to say no to the negative. Vishaya vinivartante niravaharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. It is in 259. And when he keeps saying no to things, the craving, the itch remains within. And that torments us. But when we start doing something positive, param drishtva, then we start getting a higher vision, a higher understanding, a higher taste. Nivartate. Then we become peaceful. So it is we focus on the positive, focus on what we are, and what which is positive, among the things we are attracted to, that is what those are positive for us. And by attracted to, what I mean is, here not externally what we are attracted to, I'm talking about ourselves there are something which are good, we are attracted to them, and about ourselves there are something which are bad, which we feel averse to. So don't focus on trying to curb what we feel averse to, focus on building, strengthening what we feel attracted to. The good side in us, we try to develop that. And that will fight with whatever the bad side is there inside us. So third part build on this, that R is repetition, not reformation. What do I mean by this? Repetition, not reformation. That sometimes when we are trying to work on a particular habit or a particular behavior, we want to give a particular thing up. So we quite often define ourselves by, okay, I gave this up. I gave this up. And sometimes we may do a particular thing for, maybe we decide that I'm not going to do a particular thing, we may do it for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And what happens is we may have a relapse. And when we have a relapse, we think, oh, what is the use? I'll never succeed. There are many people who make New Year resolutions. And there was one survey, I think it was published in New York Times, that 90% resolutions, New Year resolutions of people are not new. The same resolutions were made previous year, we couldn't succeed, so again we are making those resolutions. And now that does indicate that transforming ourselves is not easy. But another reason for this is that we often focus on negative resolutions. Same point. I will not do this. The problem with that is that even if we succeed for 3 months in not doing it, and after that we succumb, then what happens is we don't think I succeeded for 3 months. I failed after 3 months. What is the use? So it sets us up with a goal in which success is never sure and failure is ever possible. I may succeed in not doing a particular thing for 5 years, but after that I do it, what a fool. I have no willpower, no self-control. What a terrible person I am. Oh. So focus instead on the positive. So repetition means what? There's a mechanical aspect of how we function. And Krishna says, yato yato nischalati manaschanchalamastham tatastato niyamyetad atmanyeva vashine. He says, if you keep repeating something again and again and again, that becomes ingrained within us just by the act of repetition. And then that becomes a habitual behavior for us. So if we just keep focusing on repeating the positive, not constantly evaluating, did I succumb to the wrong thing or not? Sometimes the wrong behaviors you want to give up, the unhealthy behaviors you want to avoid, that will just come by a force we can't avoid. But instead of focusing on that, we focus on what we can do. Let me explain this with 2 examples. But let me start with one question. That most of you have heard about addiction. There are people who are addicted to... What are the common addictions in the world?
4.
Sorry?
Caffeine. 4. Social media.
Alcohol addiction.
Games.
Game, okay. Technology. Caffeine. Smoking, drugs. Procrastination.
Gossip.
Well, okay.
Gossip.
Gossip, oh God. So, okay, let me just speak. See, the word addiction is used in a technical sense and it is used in a general sense. And sometimes, in which sense we are using the word, we have to understand. Like there's a scientist working in a laboratory, and a scientist says to the assistant, I have run out of energy. And that means maybe they have battery, the battery has become discharged. The scientist comes back home and tells their family, I have no energy. And the family is not going to find a battery to charge. Is it? So we can use the word energy in a technical sense or in a general sense. So, so addiction can also be used in that sense. Addiction basically means that there is some behavior which has become compulsive. But not every behavior that is compulsive is necessarily considered an addiction. It also depends on, generally they say that there is compulsiveness to do that behavior, and that behavior has serious consequences. And even after serious consequences, there is no control over that behavior. So there's 3 C's: compulsiveness, consequences, and no control. Let's see, control but no control, lack of control. So, yes, so anything can be called generically an addiction. But generally addiction is used as the serious when there are big consequences of particular behavior. But now, so the question I had is that, does an addict have free will? Suppose somebody is an alcoholic. Do they have the free will to not drink?
Yes.
How many of you think yes? Okay. Okay. How many of you think no? Somebody is an alcoholic, they don't have the free will to drink. Okay. So most of you don't know, don't care. Okay. So there is in psychology, in psychiatry, in sociology, this is a big question, that is, say, addiction a moral defect? Is it a moral defect that this person has no willpower, the person has no character? Or is it a medical disorder? Something which is wrong. If somebody gets COVID, you don't consider that person to be a criminal. You lack willpower, that's why you got COVID. No. So, is it a medical disorder or is it a moral defect?
Medical disorder.
Well, it's a medical disorder. I rephrase the question so more answers are coming up. Okay. So, how many of you think it's a medical disorder?
COVID.
Not COVID. Alcohol. Addiction. Is addiction a moral defect or a medical disorder? Moral defect. Anyone thinks it's a medical disorder? Well, okay. Yes. So,
Both.
yeah. Okay. Can it be both?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's explain this, how it is. If you consider a snowball. A snowball at the top of the hill, if it's fallen, at that time just a snow pebble. It's tiny. A person can just click it with their toe and it'll crack apart. But as the snowball starts coming down, or the snow pebble starts coming down, it starts gaining mass, it starts gaining momentum. It becomes a snowball. By the time it comes down the hill, it may become a snow boulder. And that same person who could have clicked it with their toe and cracked it, that person will completely bowled over, get injured, maybe fractured also by that same snow object. But what has happened is, its mass and momentum has changed. So for us also, our behaviors are like that. So initially when we start a behavior, say somebody goes to college, they've grown up in a very cultured family, and they've avoided all bad habits. They go to college, and then their friends say, let's drink. He says, no, I don't drink. You're a baby? How long will you stay baby? Come on, drink, grow up. There is peer pressure that comes up. And that time, okay, peer pressure is sometimes difficult to resist, but it's possible to resist. But he said, let's drink. So at that time, that snow pebble is being formed. That time we just crack it and say, just flip it with the toe and crack it and say no. But suppose someone says yes. Then that snow pebble starts growing. It starts growing and starts growing. Further and further and further. So when we start some unhealthy behavior, at that time, it is largely a moral choice. It is something which we can say yes to or no to. But over a period of time, when we keep doing it again and again and again, the force that impels us toward that behavior, it starts becoming stronger and stronger. There are impressions inside us which impel us toward that behavior. So it becomes eventually like a boulder. And when it becomes like a boulder, a person may be very strong, but if it's a huge boulder, their strength is not of much help. It's just going to knock them down. So if it has come to that level, then we can say alcoholics don't really have the power to say no to alcohol. When the urge comes, it's very strong for them. But does that mean they're powerless? Not exactly. They may be powerless to resist the urge when it comes upon them. But they're not that powerless throughout the day. It's not that a snow boulder is hitting us with the same strength 24 hours a day. So, is addiction a medical disorder? Well, yes, in the sense that in an addict's mind, there is like a boulder-like force just hitting them. Do this, do this, do this. For somebody who is not an addict, there is not even a pebble over there. Say, why do you do it? Just stop it. But the minds are very different. The impressions have been created. The momentum is there. And that pushes a person to do certain things. And at the same time, the point is that it's not that it is always going to be there the same. The urge comes, but the urge doesn't stay always the same. That's why when you talk about reformation, means somebody had a particular habit and they said, I will give this up. Okay, it's a good intention to have. But if a boulder is going to come and hit, what can you do at that time? You will be knocked down. Sorry, what can we do?
You can move out of the way of the boulder.
That's a good one. You can move out of the way of the boulder. But in this case, the boulder is inside us. The impressions are there inside us and they hit us. And we can talk about that, how to move out of the way. That's all. You're using my example against me now. But it's a good point, yeah?
So I often perceive morality to be very individualized, as in my morals are probably different from someone else's morals. So on what basis do we judge if someone else has a moral defect or not?
Okay, so morality can be different. Yes, there are many areas in which morality can be subjective. But there are also many areas where we agree. So for example, there are specific things which are right or wrong. We may differ. Some people may think that particular dietary choices are wrong. Others may think there's nothing wrong about them. That's one thing. But say if somebody is walking on the road and they're going through a crowded place and they step on somebody's foot, say, oh, I'm sorry. That's just universal decency. If somebody steps on the foot and they say, oh, I stepped on the foot, and they deliberately raise their foot and bang their foot again on them. Are you crazy? Are you evil? What happened to you? So there are many areas where we agree about it. So basically, when I am using the word moral choice or moral defect over here is that even according to that own person's moral standards, that person knows this is right, but they can't do it. Like there are alcoholics who are proud of being alcoholics. They don't want to give it up also. There was this once an anti-alcohol meeting was conducted by a campaigner, and he wanted to demonstrate to the audience how dangerous alcoholism was. So after he gave a fiery talk, he took out a glass which contained some alcohol, and then he had a small box in which he had put a tiny insect. He opened the box and put the insect into that alcohol. The insect fluttered around for a few moments, and the insect just sank dead. And he looked at all the audience. So, what do you learn from this? And all of them became grave and started looking down. And one of them just was very bubbly. He says, what do you learn from this? He says, when we drink alcohol, all the germs and worms in our stomach die. So, some people, they just don't feel there's anything wrong with it. For them, it's very difficult to reform. They want to justify it. But there are people who acknowledge that this is what I did was wrong, but still I'm not able to give it up. So when I'm using is it a moral defect means you know what is wrong according to your own standards, but still you're not able to give it up. So the point I was making is that if somebody has a snowball inside them, and a snowball is just racing toward them, it's inside them, so they can't get out of the way, they will be knocked down. So if they define themselves by whether they can resist the snowball or not, they will always end up thinking of themselves as bad, as defeated. So that's why focus on the repetition. Repetition here means what? That rather than thinking whether I can resist this snowball when it comes upon me or not, can I create another snowball which will push me in a healthier direction? Can I create a healthier habit? So if we keep repeating something healthier for ourselves. That may also become like begin like a snow pebble, but it will become stronger, stronger, stronger. And as it becomes stronger and stronger, it will push us in that direction. So generally, when somebody does something, some unhealthy behavior, these are, say somebody, as I said, somebody is addicted to something. It's not generally because that person is a bad person. It's just their coping mechanism. We all have faced difficulties in life, and we find different ways to cope with those difficulties. So for some people, their coping mechanism is just turn on TV and forget everything else. And that's why if they're just forgetting the whole world watching TV. And then somebody just comes in between, blocks the TV. They may yell at that person. This is half a minute I'm standing there. Why do you do it like this? But for them, this is their relief. And you are blocking their relief. That's why the reaction is there. So everyone has their different ways of coping with difficulties. So some ways, many times unfortunately, the way we cope with our difficulties ends up compounding those difficulties. Makes the difficulties worse. But at that time we get some relief. So somebody drinks, I have this problem, I have this problem, I have this problem. Just drink and forget everything else. Well, you may forget everything else, but it's only for some time. And after that, all the problems come back and somebody they become worse because of what we did when we were drunk. But the problem is, it's a coping mechanism. And suppose, say, whenever somebody feels a little insecure, a little worried, a little fearful, then say they drink. I say, I'm not going to drink. Well, okay, that's willpower is there, but it may not work. So instead, let them try to find out some other way to cope with it. Say, if when somebody gets angry and they yell at someone, and they say, I'm not going to yell at anyone else. Now the problem with anger is that anger compounds itself. What do you mean compounds itself? Sometimes we resolve, I will not get angry. And then when we get angry about having gotten angry. Then we say somebody has resolved, I will not get angry. And then we know they have made the resolution, they're getting angry. And then we remind them, hey, you're getting angry. I'm not getting angry. So what happens is they deny and they get angry about being reminded they're angry. So anger, it compounds itself that way. And that's why it's very difficult to avoid it directly. But anger could be a coping mechanism. When we feel that things are going out of my control, I have to get control over things. You're not listening to me, you have to listen to me. So we think of anger as a coping mechanism when things are threatening to go out of control. But then what happens is anger is a power. It is a power, but it is a power that undercuts our power. That we have certain power by our character, by our personality, by our abilities. And that is, you could say, the power that is earned. We have commanded that power. But when we lose our temper and then we yell at others to get things done, what happens is we may get those things done, but the other people lose respect for us. So it is a power that undercuts our power. It gives us temporary power, but it cuts that way at the longer power that we could have had. By our composed behavior, by our proper, competent, professional kind of behavior. So anger is a coping mechanism. So rather than saying I will not get angry, we can focus on, is there another way I could cope with this? So whenever I feel that things are going out of control, what could I do? Maybe I could remember that even that God is in control, and He will actually bring everything He will bring things to a good conclusion. That things that may not be in my control, but the things that are in God's control. Maybe I could just pause and chant some mantras, pray. So that could be another coping mechanism. That's a healthier coping mechanism. Now, we may say this healthier coping mechanism may not work all the time. That is fine. But just start that. Just start repetition. So make a habit of praying, make a habit of chanting some mantras, and just focus on repeating that. Focus on repeating that. So we may still get angry, but don't beat ourselves up for getting angry. Okay, that boulder may still hit me sometimes, it may knock me over. But what I am doing is, I am also creating another coping mechanism, a healthier coping mechanism. And right now, this is not that strong. So that's why when again something threatens us, we still get angry. But who knows, if we have started praying, started chanting some mantras, what will happen is, maybe when we are exploding, At that time, we may realize, hey, Vinny, I shouldn't be doing this. We may realize it before we just make a complete mess of things. Maybe instead of exploding 100%, we might explode 60-70%. And we can minimize the damage we cause. And slowly it will decrease. So what we focus on is not that when that snow boulder comes, I will not get bowled over by it. But rather, I'll start another snowball. And that is what will help me. So that will push me over a period of time if we develop this. If we develop a healthier coping mechanism. It could be chanting mantras, it could be taking some deep breaths. It could just be reading something about the danger of anger, reading something, some wisdom quote or something like that. We develop that habit, then that will eventually become like a snow boulder. And by default, we will push towards a healthier coping mechanism. It may take time, but that will transform us in a more sustainable way. Yes?
So I have a question. Like, if the bad habit started before, like, the good habit of, like, how you're handling the anger, wouldn't it be, like, more stronger than the good habit? So, like, no matter, like, how much you're trying that bad habit is still getting, like, stronger?
That's a good question. Because the bad habit started earlier, wouldn't it be stronger than the good habit? Yes, initially it will be. That's true. But the good habit can also be developed. And the good habit is an advantage. It is that we are working with it, not against it. Whereas the bad habit, we are fighting against it. So yes, so in one sense, we are empowering the good habit and we are trying to resist the bad habit. So that's why over a period of time, it will change. So that's why transformation doesn't happen immediately. It may not happen immediately in many occasions. Some people may say that, okay, I'm going to stop drinking, and they stop drinking. Two people might be there, two friends might be there. One person stops drinking immediately, another person takes a long time to stop drinking. Why? It may be different. It's not that one person has more willpower, the other person has less willpower. It could be, but that need not be the only reason. Maybe the first person was just a social drinker. They just wanted to hang out with people, and all the people they wanted to hang out used to drink. So now they change their social circle. They no longer feel the need for drinking, and it just goes away. So for them, drinking was not a coping mechanism against stress or fear or insecurity or negativity. It was just a coping mechanism against loneliness. And when they could find another solution to loneliness, they could belong to another circle where they didn't have to drink to belong to that circle. Then they just give it up immediately. But for somebody for whom drinking was a coping mechanism against insecurity, fear, negativity, unless they find some other way to cope with it, it may take a longer time to give it up. So each of us is an individual. And so we don't know how strong the boulder is that's going to hit us. So that's why we focus on, I will not be knocked over by this boulder. We may be knocked over, and then we will be knocked over by the boulder, and then we'll knock ourselves further. What a terrible person I am. But it's just focus on repetition of the positive, not avoiding the relapse, not evaluating whether I have reformed or not. Don't focus on that part. We want that to change, but don't focus on that. So Krishna talks about this. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu upajayate. He gives a whole, from contemplation, he says, there's a momentum that begins. From contemplation comes attachment. Hey, that's nice. I want it. That's attachment. Sangat sanjayate kama. And then kama krodho vijayate. Who says I can't have it? Get lost. Whoever says I can't have it. Even if our own intelligence says, can't have, you shouldn't be doing this. It says, get lost. So, I was talking to an alcoholic anonymous group in India. One of them made a very eloquent statement. He says, like, whenever I see a bottle of alcohol, it's like my intelligence goes on vacation. Everything that I've learned, I tend to forget it. That's what happens. Krishna says the same thing actually. He says, Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhrama, buddhi nasho. So as this momentum goes down and down, it just knocks everything out of its way. That snow boulder is very strong. So what we can do is try to focus on using the same mechanism to create another snowball that is healthier, that will push us in healthier directions. So that is the third part. What is the third part just now discussed?
Repetition, not reformation.
Yeah, we want to reform, but focus on the repetition of the positive, not whether I have reformed myself of the negative. And that brings us to the last part. So reformation is more internal. Has my behavior changed? The last is engagement, not achievement. What do I mean by this is? that we often waver between two extremes. I will do something wonderful, or I will never be able to do anything wonderful. So you can say, if you consider pendulum, one is ego. I will do something wonderful. That is, okay, I'll give up this habit and I'll show the whole world how wonderful I am. Some people want to lose weight and they take some extreme measures, and then they lose weight and they want to show everyone how much I lost weight. And then they will lose like a huge amount of weight in a short time, and then after some time, they gain a huge amount of weight in a short time. And they gain more than what they lost also. So what happens is that if our focus is only on showing, is our focus on changing or on showing the world that we have changed? You may say, yeah, of course I want the world to know that I have changed. That's fine. But what is our focus on? Our focus is only on showing the world that we have changed, and that is more of achievement oriented thing. So one is, I was able to do something wonderful. I will do something wonderful. That is one side of the ego. But if the pendulum goes to the other side, the other side is what? I will never be able to do anything wonderful. That is insecurity. So ego or insecurity, these are two extremes of how we may view ourselves. I will do something wonderful, I will never be able to do anything wonderful. And that's what, especially in youth, in a competitive world, we look around us and, I'm in this class, I'm going to come first in this class. Oh, I'll never be able to do anything with my life. We go in between. But what we can, in between the pendulum, in between ego and insecurity is humility. What is humility? Humility, okay. Okay. I'm asking questions, sometimes I'm going to answer them myself. Thank you. So humility means, in this context, I can do something meaningful. I can stay engaged and do something meaningful. It may or may not be wonderful. When I focus too much on doing something wonderful, sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't do it. But something meaningful, I can do right now. I can do something meaningful. So humility means not that I am wonderful or I am dreadful. But rather, I can do something meaningful. So whether I will be able to change myself, give up a bad habit, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. No one knows the future. But right now, I can do something meaningful. So focus on that. Focus on engagement, not on achievement. This is what Krishna says several times. When he says, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu katachana. What he essentially means by that is that focus on engaging yourself. The achievements may sometimes come, they may not come. Sometimes they come after a long time, sometimes they come slowly. Now we may say, I want to achieve. Yeah, that's fine. But the problem is when we focus on achievement, then our mind is constantly insecure. Will I achieve? Will I not achieve? Will I achieve? Will I not achieve? So imagine the student is studying. Instead of reading the book, the student is thinking, will I come first in class or not? Will I come first in class or not? Well, if you're not studying, you're definitely not going to first in the class. So focus on studying right now. So focus on what is meaningful. Keep yourself engaged. And when we try this, instead of thinking, for the rest of my life, I will never do this. Okay, for today, can I do this? Not what I can't do, can I do this? Keep myself engaged. Small, simple steps. Small, small, keep yourself engaged. Small, simple steps are doable for each one of us. Shanai, shanai, uparame, buddhyadriti gruhita. Gradually, step by step. Just keep doing small things. So when you focus, can I do something meaningful right now? Yes, I can. Now, tomorrow somebody might provoke me and I still get angry. But right now, can I behave kindly? Can I speak sweetly? Can I act courteously? Yes, I can. So focus on doing something meaningful right now. Focus on engagement, not achievement. Achievement is not in our control, but engagement is in our control. And what happens is engagement creates the impressions. The impression is also letting the snowball go down. And slowly we will improve. So when we focus on what is meaningful, can I do something meaningful right now? Yeah, I can. Okay, what can I do right now? I'm talking with this person, let me be attentive, let me be polite. I'm in this room, let me just organize this room a little better. I don't know whether I can change, I'm an untidy person, I want to become tidy. It may take some time, but right now, can I clean this room? Okay, 5 minutes I can spend and clean up this room. Let me do that. Let me do something meaningful. So when we do this, we'll find that these small things, small changes, done steadily, they have a dramatic effect. Because what happens is, we may think this change is such a small thing. Now, I just speak kindly with one person right now, and then tomorrow I'll still get angry and I'll yell at that person. So what is the use of speaking kindly right now? No. See, every action that we do, it is also creating an impression. Not just on another person, it's also on me. So if I am speaking kindly right now, speaking politely right now, acting responsibly right now, that is also creating an impression. But that may not lead to a dramatic transformation in that other person's perception of me. That may not lead to a transformation in the world. There may not be any achievement, but it is a foundation for achievement. So if we focus on what is meaningful, let me do something meaningful right now, then we will find that things will change. And things will change not just internally, but also externally. In fact, I'll conclude with this point that for us, we as human beings need to feel that we are doing something meaningful. Otherwise, we gravitate toward things that are meaningless. Meaningful and meaningless are opposite, literally. But what I mean by this is that we may say we want pleasure. We all want pleasure. Well, yes and no. We want pleasure, but we don't just want pleasure. We want meaningful pleasure. Now suppose there's some small child in a home and some relatives come. The relatives may start, just to have fun, tickle the belly of the child. Now when the child is tickled, the child will start laughing. Now suppose the child is laughing. Is that laughter happiness? No. If it were happiness, no, scientists could just develop a perpetual tickling machine. And we could all be happy for the rest of our lives. No, but we would be happy. If you want to have a serious discussion with someone and the person starts tickling us, we will be laughing, but we are annoyed. Stop it! I want to talk something serious with you. So we don't just want pleasure. We want meaningful pleasure. And so tickling leading to laughter is one kind of pleasure, but it is meaningless pleasure. And we get annoyed with that sometimes. And sometimes to do something meaningful, we may even put aside pleasure. If you have to study something, to solve some serious problem, it's not pleasant in itself. But if it's a problem that is an issue that matters to us, we apply ourselves. So actually we want meaning more than pleasure, in one sense. We want pleasure, but for the sake of meaning, we are ready to sacrifice pleasure also. That means, I want to take care, if parents have a newborn baby, it gives them a sense of meaning. We are taking care of this new life in this world. And they accept the sleepless nights at that time. So for the sake of meaning, we can give up pleasure also. So why am I talking this point here? Because I pointed with, see, achievement gives us some pleasure. But that is not in our control. But doing something meaningful is in our control. And when we do that, that itself gives us a fulfillment that is deeper than some gross pleasure. So if we change ourselves for the better, the world may recognize and appreciate us, or the world may or may not recognize and appreciate us. But if we change for the better, we will start appreciating ourselves more. I started by talking about how this student, was a very successful student, was insulting himself. So actually speaking, no one has a right to insult us. Not even we ourselves. Because we are all parts of God. If we are insulting ourselves, we are insulting a part of God. And that means, in a sense, we are insulting God. We don't have a right to insult ourselves. But the point is, we can't just artificially praise ourselves. There are flaws in us. But when we work on doing something meaningful, our own self-respect will increase. Because we will start saying, yes, I am doing something meaningful. And actually, I am not dependent on the world's praise to do this. And that will actually increase our respect for ourselves even more. Now, of course, if the world appreciates us, that's good. Because we want to do something tangible in the world. But when we are able to do something without being dependent on the world's appreciation, and we do something meaningful in spite of that, we'll find that that is the way to increase our self-respect. Self-respect doesn't increase by just forcing the world to respect us. Self-respect increases by doing something that we will respect ourselves for. Doing something that, yeah, I know it's difficult, but if I do it, it will be good. That's all. Setting something which is valuable for us, important, meaningful for us, and doing it. And in that way, that, as I said, as we start caring for ourselves more and more, we start transforming ourselves more and more. So that this care acronym which I discussed, it begins by respect. Is I don't insult myself, I respect myself. But from the respect, actually I become more and more respectable. I become more and more positively transformed. So it becomes a cycle where cyclically it grows. We have a positive attitude towards ourselves and we positively transform ourselves. That strengthens the positive attitude. That positive attitude further gives us the fuel to transform ourselves positively. So positive attitude and positive transformation. This becomes a powerful cycle. And that's what happens to Arjuna at the end of the Gita. What happens is Arjuna is overwhelmed. He's confused, he's lost. He's put aside his bow saying, I can't fight. But by the end of the Gita, he has picked up his bow, ready to fight. So Arjuna's bow represents our confidence. Sometimes we may not have to fight physical wars against others, but we have to fight inner wars against our own lower self. Sometimes we just get demoralized. I quit, I can't do it. But if we understand the Gita's wisdom and apply the Gita's principles, we all can pick up our bow. We all can gain confidence. And we can embark on this journey of self-transformation through care. So I'll quickly summarize. I discussed today about how 4 principles for self-transformation based on the Bhagavad-Gita. What was the acronym? Care. C was what? Curiosity,
not criticism.
Thank you. Curiosity, not criticism. And instead of labeling our behavior negatively, we try to be curious and observe ourselves from a third person perspective. Okay, what exactly made me do like this? What situation? What happened? So that way we learn more about ourselves. So our body and mind are like a machine, and they sometimes function mechanically. So we observe ourselves. Okay, why did this machine perform like this? That's curiosity. And A was attraction, not aversion. That means if you want to transform ourselves, we don't focus on what is negative about us, what we feel averse about us. We focus on what we are attracted to. And we try to leverage that. We work on that. That means that we can't empty our mind. We are going to think about it. If we're jealous of someone, we can't just stop jealousy. It's like an involuntary reaction, psychological reaction. But what we can do is not act on it or act on something more. Okay, if I can appreciate others nicely, let me do that. So what is good about us, build on that. Instead of trying to curb negative habits, build positive habits and let those positive habits fight against the negative habits. And third was what?
Repetition, not reformation.
Yes, repetition, not reformation. That means what? Yes, we want to transform ourselves, but if we make our parameter for transformation, okay, did I give up that bad habit? Did I become reformed of that bad habit? Then we may not succeed because sometimes that boulder, we saw the snow pebble become snow boulder, that might be so big that it might just knock us over. So for us, we don't know how strong an unhealthy habit is, how strong the condition is. So instead of focusing on whether we can stop doing that, we can focus on creating a better coping mechanism. Like start another snow pebble and let it become a snowball. So if we keep repeating healthy behaviors, then they will become a healthy habit and we will be able to choose them more easily. And the last was?
Engagement, not achievement.
Yes. So, see, in all these things, the second part is not a bad part. Criticism is also sometimes necessary. What we are averse about, we have to be aware of that. Reformation is also what we want. Achievement also is something which we want. But focus. If we focus on achievement, then we get either caught in ego or insecurity. I will do something wonderful. Insecurity, I will never be able to do anything wonderful. And in that process, we just get lost. Instead, let me do something meaningful right now. I don't know whether I'll be able to completely get rid of my anger issue. But right now, I can speak kindly. I can behave courteously. So let me do that. But when we say there's no pleasure, I want to achieve something and get that pleasure. Actually, yes and no. We want pleasure, but we want meaningful pleasure. And if we keep doing something meaningful right now, we will get an inner fulfillment. that is far greater than outer recognition. We want the world to respect us, and that is good if we do something respectable. But more important is that we learn to respect ourselves. And that doesn't happen simply by patting ourselves on the back. It is by doing something for which we can respect ourselves. So if we steadily do something meaningful without depending on the world's recognition, we will find that our respect for ourselves will increase. Not in an egoistic sense, but in a positive sense, in a constructive sense. And that's why, so a positive attitude towards ourselves and a positive transformation in ourselves. They will work in a cycle by which we will become better and better till we manifest the divinity that we all are a part of, till we become the best that we can be, till we fulfill the destiny that God has made for all of us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I have a bad habit that I need to reform. You know what is that? I give too long classes. So, but there's some interaction. Thank you for your patience. Any questions or comments at this point? Yes, please.
Is there something called being over-curious, where you're tend to be curious multiplication, where you're not supposed to be curious, just like supposed to learn the information instead?
Okay. Is there something like being too curious? Well, rather than saying it's too curious, you can say that is it curiosity that is directed or is misdirected? So curiosity is a faculty that we have. And there could be hundreds of things that we can be curious about. So gossip is also arising from curiosity, isn't it? Hey, what happened to that person? Oh, okay. So how do rumors spread? Because people in one sense are curious. But it is curiosity that is not constructively directed. So we could say that curiosity is a faculty which we all have. And nobody can say I don't have curiosity. Every time we look up at a phone to say what is the breaking news, that's our curiosity coming out. The whole internet, not major part of the internet exists because people are curious. But what we can do is try to create, at least conceptually for ourselves, a hierarchy of things which are more important and less important for us. So if we are curious about the things that are more important for us, then we won't spend so much time being curious about the things that are not so important for us. So it's not so much over curiosity as misdirected curiosity. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? So thank you very much for your thoughtful participation today, your patient hearing. I hope and pray that the Gita's wisdom helps all of you to, as I said, manifest the divinity. We all can be so much better than what we are. There are many things about us which are good, but there is so much more that we can do. So much better we can become. And the Gita stands as a ready resource for that. So all the very best to all of you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, thank you for self-care medicine for us.
Self-care. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, I have written a few books. These are 4 of my latest books. This is the Gita for Daily Mindfulness, the 365 articles based on different verses from the Gita, one for each day of the year. And it's in 6-7 sections. There's positive attitude is there. There is growing through life's adversities, or there is being more sensitive in our speech, being less judgmental with others, or learning to stay steady amidst ups and downs of life. There are sections like these. There are broadly 3 sections: nourish yourself, nourish your relationship, and nourish your devotion. So you can, the table of contents is around 20 pages, 15 pages. So you can read whichever article you like anytime. So this is, if you want to study the Gita from an applicational perspective, many of the points that I spoke today, they are from this book, especially from there's a section called Overcoming Temptations. So much of what I spoke is from that section in this book. And we have 2 other books. This is Bhagavad-Gita Insights. This is 100 articles with about 80 illustrations, diagrams depicting the Gita's themes. This is especially if you study the Gita and there are some rational questions that may come up. Okay, the Gita talks about detachment, but if you are detached, how can we be ambitious? How can we be responsible? Won't we become cold-hearted? So if Gita talks that God is in control of everything, then do we really have free will? If everything is destined, then is our future also destined? So questions like these are answered in this book, Bhagavad-Gita Insights. 100 articles, each of them is phrased like a question. So an answer to that question. This is Relishing Bhagavad-Gita. If you're interested in Mahabharata and the stories from the Mahabharata and their practical relevance to our lives, this explains the Gita's concepts through the lens of the Krishna-Arjuna relationship and the incidents in their life as described in the Mahabharata and how they correlate with the Bhagavad-Gita. So how Krishna demonstrates his teachings in the Gita through the Mahabharata. That's what this book depicts. And then this is 365 quotes based on the Bhagavad-Gita. This is like a desktop calendar. You can keep the calendar with you in your home or in your office desk. And each quote is a seed for thoughts and for contemplation and discussion. So if you Google the quote, you'll go to my website gitadaily.com, where there's an entire article explaining the quote as well as its connection with the Gita verse that is mentioned here. But even without that, each quote is self-explanatory. This is also a way you can stay connected with spiritual wisdom. Sometimes reading a book or article may be difficult, but just reading a quote every day is relatively easier, and that quote you can contemplate on it. You can develop your own thoughts on that quote, based on the quote also. So these 4 resources are available. 3 of these are $15 each. The big book is $25. The Gita Mindfulness, everything else is $15. If you want all 4 of them, that's for $60. Okay. So this will be available behind the table if you want. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful summary of Gita. The acronym CARE, and it shows how much you care for the Gita-verse audience. And I hope all the audience here have taken some points that they can practice and implement. If you remember, Prabhu, you had come, I think, 4 years ago before COVID to the same place. And your association definitely, though it was long ago, has an impact on all of us. And we request you to kindly bless all of us so that we stay interested and we continue learning and listening to more of you in the future. Thank you so much for your association. And announcement from Gita Wise, most of you have either your children or parents are attending classes. If you are not part of the Gita Wise classes, please do enroll. We have children's classes starting from August 14th. And we have curriculum day on August 6th in the library, Charan Folks Library. So please do enroll your children. And if you as adult are not part of the classes, we have ladies and men's classes. I strongly recommend and encourage you all to enroll. Thank you for joining. And before leaving, please, we have made prasadam boxes. Please take the box and make sure you are leaving with the box. Thank you once again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
కొంచెం తెలుగులో అయితే కొంచెం ఆటలు కొన్ని
అది మనకి ఎట్లా అమల్లో పెట్టడం ఎట్లా
కొన్ని చేయాలని చెప్తారు ఫస్ట్ చాంటింగ్ చేస్తే రిలాక్స్ చాంటింగ్ స్టడీ
అమల్లో పెట్టడం ఎట్లా ఇస్తూ ఉంటాం చాలా ఇస్తూ ఉంటాం.